Okay, good afternoon, one and all. So, in this session, we are going to discuss about uh, few concepts, very few concepts we are going to discuss. Something we have computer system architecture, followed with that we have clustered systems, then followed with that we have operating system structure. So, in this we have three different type of systems what we are going to come across. So, let's go directly into this. Okay, so we were discussing about something called as Android operating system. So Android operating system is an open source operating system, okay, and it is mostly handled by handset alliances, open handset alliances, which is actually controlled by Google company. Now, coming to, well, we were discussing about the difference between Android and iOS. So, since Android is an open source operating system, whereas coming to iOS, this is a closed source operating system. Yeah. So actually both these platforms are actually built using based upon Linux kernel. Okay, so they both uses the same kernel what we have in order to make sure that the hardware devices are functioning properly. That is nothing but Linux based kernel. And here it actually provides different techniques or provides different properties, set of properties like controlling the different processes, how the memory management has to be done, and device management. Well, we already discussed about process management, memory management, and device management. The same is what is going to be taken care by this particular kernel. And moreover, power management is also done. Why? Because see, these are handheld devices, right? We use Android operating system in our mobile phones, and they do have certain limitations. So, what are the limitations they do have? Nothing but the power, the battery backup is not that much. So most probably, if you're using perfectly with the net connection, maybe your battery may last only for a day, not more than that, right? So in order to make sure that the system is able to manage each and everything, for that, we require these kind of managers, okay, like process manager, device manager, memory manager, and PowerPoint manager. Now, when we are running this application, so definitely we require some kind of platform where we can run this particular application. Simply developing an application doesn't run them. For example, if we people are creating a Java program, well, without having a Java virtual machine in your system, we cannot execute that particular program, isn't it? In the same way here, for running in Android, if you have created any application and you want to run it in Android operating system, definitely we require something called as DVM. That is nothing but Dalvik Virtual Machine. If this machine is existing in the system, then only we can execute the different applications what we are actually having. Okay. Apart from that, this particular Android operating system will have a structure which includes the different kind of framework which are supporting web browsers and database and multimedia. So for WebKit, as we okay, we'll see in the diagram and then I'll explain you. So what do you mean by this WebKit, database, SQLite, and multimedia? So this is a framework related to your Android operating system. The first and foremost, what your people are seeing is the application framework. This is mostly meant for the user. Okay, so there will be multiple users present here. These users are going to access the information. So we are the users and we are going to create different applications. So definitely we require some kind of framework based on which we people can create that particular application. So Android provides a very rich set of framework activities, and based on that we can perform or we can create our own different programs and we can directly deploy in our application in our mobile phones. Okay. Now before well, we are actually creating application, we are deploying. Till there it's okay, but how that particular app is getting integrated with your mobile phone, so that is most important. For that, already inbuilt, we have certain set of libraries and also runtime application. If we talk about runtime application, we have two things here. These are most important. This I think we already explained it, Dalvik virtual machine. This machine is required to run the applications which are created for Android-based operating system. Same way for Apple also, we might be having some kind of virtual machine based on which these people might be executing it. I think in the previous session we discussed it. We have something called Aqua and Cocoa. So based on this Aqua, HCUA and COCOA. Based on these two platforms, the iOS based applications run. But whereas coming to Android, we require this Dalvik virtual machine. Now, Coming to this libraries here, so the libraries are actually provided so that our whatever the applications we are creating that can execute it perfectly. For example, in Java, in order to execute a program, what we people are doing, we people are actually first importing some packages. So what is the main purpose of getting those packages is nothing but they have some set of what we call functions which can be directly implemented in our program. For example, in Java, we people are writing something called system dot in dot out, right? So that is nothing but you wanted to print some statement. Same way, if you want to get a statement, we have some inbuilt functions. So we are getting those functions from the one of the particular package which we are importing. Now these particular packages consist of which set of methods. This method will consist of again some set of programs, okay, some set of instructions. Based on this instruction, your program will get executed. Okay, so same way here also we are provided with rich set of libraries. So SQLite is actually meant for database. So if you are connecting your system with the database, so then this library comes into picture. It will provide you this set of functions which can be used in order to perform your operation well. Then we have something called as WebKit. WebKit is actually used for web applications. So we people are creating browser means different websites and all. So same way in Android you wanted to create a website. So to get that website work properly and whatever the interfaces are there, for that we are going to use this WebKit concept. Then we have OpenGL as stated. This is mostly used for your graphics. Okay, so for all the computer graphics related information like the graphical user interface, if you're writing a program for a graphical user interface based on Android application for Android based application, then we are going to use this particular library OpenGL. And then we have media framework. So similarly, this media framework is meant for your audio and video related programs, whatever we are writing or we are executing it. For example, in WhatsApp, we people are actually sending images as well as videos. Well, how these videos are getting transmitted to your friends? So definitely, we require some libraries. So based on the libraries, your media. So that is nothing but the media framework using which we are actually transmitting the data. After this, we have something called as LIBC. This is the core related libraries what we have in order to execute. This is mostly related to your system level programs. Whatever the system level programs we people are creating it. System in the sense here I am talking about internal related to your hardware related program which we people are creating it. For that, this particular library comes into picture. Okay. So this is all related to your application framework of your Android operating system. Now let's get into the computer system architecture. Well, this is a common diagram of how our system actually works. Okay, this is your CPU, what we have here. This is the memory for accessing the data, and this is our personal device. Device is nothing but it may be your personal computer, maybe a laptop, or maybe your mobile phone. So what happens exactly from the device, we will be giving instructions to the central processing unit. So what are the instructions we can give? It may be related to your IBO, or it may be related to process some data, or it may be some kind of interrupt. Now this information will be transmitted to this particular CPU. Now this CPU will actually consist of several set of threads. Actually, when we people are trying to perform some task, one process will be created. As I gave you an example of a web browser, you want to search some site. So what we are going to do, we'll simply open a web browser, Google Chrome, and we'll simply type it. So when you're opening that particular web browser, that becomes one process. And within that process, if you people are adding more tabs, so that becomes individual separate child process. Okay, so your entire web browser becomes a parent process, and in between, if you have multiple tabs, those will become a child process. So what happens here? There is a small difference here. So whenever you terminate the parent process, automatically the child processes will get terminated. Like for example, you have around 10 tabs in your browser. Now suddenly what you did is you simply close up the browser. What will happen? Along with the browser, all the 10 tabs will get terminated. Okay, so that is what happens here. But if you are terminating a child process, that doesn't mean that the parent process will be terminated. Something like you are just terminated one of the tabs. Okay, so but you did not terminate the entire web browser. It will still keep on working the same way. So that is a small difference that we do have. Now, whatever the instructions we people actually provided to the CPU, it will actually execute a instruction execution cycle. So what do you mean by instruction execution cycle? Is nothing but the von Neumann architecture. Okay, so we already discussed it. Von Newman architecture. So what it exactly does, it actually performs some set of instructions. So already we discussed it, just I'll revise it here. So what are the instructions is, first get the information from the memory. So whatever the instruction we want to execute it, get that instruction from the memory, store it into CPU. Then based on that, decode it, and based on that, whatever the operands are required, get that operands. That is what he's talking about here, data. So that operands are being brought here. And now what happens, this CPU is going to perform operations on that particular in execution means instructions whatever are provided. Now whatever the result is there, that result will be displayed to the device, and once this is done, automatically this entire process will shut down. Okay, so that is what he's talking about in this. Well, apart from that, we have a direct memory access. So what it means to say here is, sometimes we can directly access, rather than sending any instruction to the CPU, we can directly access information to the memory. And from there we try to get the information and process it. Like for example, you people are surfing your mobile phone. You're not opening any app. When you open the app, then that particular content will be loaded into your RAM. But since here we are not opening any content here, we're simply surfing the different apps what we have in our node. So what we are doing, we are directly getting it from the memory, but we are not actually executing it. So this is what the whole scenario of your computer system architecture. Okay, so next, well, we have some different type of, as I told, the different type of architectures here. So we have a single processor architecture. Same way we have multi-processor architecture. If we talk about a single processor architecture, we'll be having a single process which will be executing our instruction. Single processor is nothing but a single CPU. And in this, what happens? A single processor exists, and this process will execute the task one after another. Since we have only one processor here, it will execute whatever the instructions we are giving, it will execute it one after another. Simultaneously, it cannot execute it. That is what comes under single processor architecture. Now later what happened, as the technology advanced, they started developing multi-processor architecture. So within a single CPU, you will be having multiple processors. This is the hardware. Remember, processor is the hardware. So you may be having multiple, triple or double dual core operators. Okay, so here multiprocessor means multiple processes will be executing, and each processor will perform a different task simultaneously. Maybe one of the processors is allocated to this, one of the another process is allocated to this processor, and P3 is allocated to this particular processor, and P4 is allocated to this. So simultaneously what happens? Automatically all the processes are getting executed at a time. But if we have a single process, what will happen? So at a time we can give only P1. We cannot give P2 until and unless P1 is completed. Once this is completed, then we can assign P2. Till then, this particular process has to wait in a queue. So we'll be having a different queue that we will discuss in the second unit. Then I'll explain in elaborated way how it exactly does. Now there exists some advantages related to the multiprocessor. Obviously, multiple processes are getting executed simultaneously. That means it will have a lot of advantages. What is the advantage it has is increased throughput. The throughput is nothing but the number of instructions that are executed per second. That's how fastly your system is executing and how many instructions it is executing. That is what we call it as throughput. So definitely, if one processor is working on one particular task and another system has some 2 to 3 processors working on multiple different processes, so definitely this is much more better than that, isn't it? The throughput will definitely exist. Same way, economy of scale. So since multiple processes are executing simultaneously, we will be saving time and money as well. Or else what will happen? More power consumption will be there, more time taking it will be. Okay, the batch processor is the best example for your single processor. I'll explain that in the next slide. So then you can understand how why it takes so much of time. Next, increased reliability. Reliability is nothing but we can say it's a belief. Okay, having a trust on something. So increased reliability means if you are performing multiple tasks simultaneously, you will have a belief that okay, it will get executed and you will be given the results very fastly. But in case if you are going with a single processor, we may not be reliable. Why? Because since for execution of a one process, it may take a lot of time, isn't it? So for example, we have a single processor here, let us suppose. And you have how many processors? P1, P2, P3. Now first what you will do, we will be sending a process P1 to get executed. Now this processor will perform this and after that P2 will be allocated. Now during this P2 execution, suddenly there is a power failure and you don't have a backup. What will happen? P2 will not be executed. But in case, sorry, you have a system which has multiple processes like this, processors, and you have how many processors here? C1, C2, and C3. Now each processor will be allocated one process, isn't it? So by the time, within less time, all this process will execute it. So in that case, what happens? You people can much more reliable on this particular computer rather than this, isn't it? So that is what he means to say reliable in nature. So basically, these are of two types: asymmetric and symmetric multiprocessing. Okay, asymmetric means it will have something like a so we'll be having one of the system or the acting as something called as master and slave based concept here. So one of the system, one of the processor will act as the master and remaining will be executing it. Okay. So what this master will do is it will make sure that other processes are getting executed perfectly. If anyone is wrong, he will not do any work. He will assign the task, something like the class representative. Class representative will not perform any task. They will simply allocate to the students. Okay, students will do the task, and this class representative, what it does is actually monitors it. This is what we generally call it as asymmetry. Symmetric means simultaneously all are doing at a time. Okay, fine. This is the diagram related to your symmetric multiprocessing and coming to your dual core architecture. So if we talk about here, symmetric multiprocessing, what happens? Multiple CPUs are there, and all these CPUs will have this. This is most important, cache. Okay, all these CPUs will have their own memory, which is a small size. I think we people know that. Same way we have something called as registers, and we know that the size of the register is less than 1 KB. We already discussed about this. Same way cache is also something around not more than 2 to 12 MB. Okay, not more than 12 MB we can have a cache. Now these every CPU will have its own cache, and all these are connected together to a single bus, and that is connected to a memory. So what happens here? Multiple processors are executing simultaneously, and they have their own registers and caches. They can store the information there, perform the operation, and store back the information to the memory. But about dual core ERMS, here we have only two CPUs. We cannot add more than that. So here, whatever the registers are there, caches, this is similar to your symmetric multiprocessing, but here multiple CPUs can be allocated. But whereas coming to dual core, we will be having only two CPUs both executing at a time. Okay, so that is the only difference that exists between these two. Earlier laptops, 10 years back, whatever the laptops we do have, those are actually based upon this dual core design. We have multiple, okay, two processors which are executing simultaneously. But nowadays, whatever the laptops we are getting, they are very fast. They are very much, multiple processors are being inbuilt in that, and they are executing that particular task easier. Okay, they are making our task very easier. Why? Because there are multiple processors that are being inbuilt in that particular system. Okay, next we have something called cluster systems here. So cluster systems, if you come across, this is nothing but this is similar to your multiprocessing, but there exists a small difference here. Well, multiprocessing is somewhat loosely coupled. Loosely coupled in the sense, well, individual systems or the nodes will be there, those will be joined together. If you observe this, we have in the previous slide, I have represented that CPUs. There are two CPUs, three CPUs are connected. These three are different systems. These have been just integrated. That means these are not perfectly inbuilt. Okay, if that particular bus through which we are trying to transmit the memory, if that has got damaged, then definitely any of the CPU will not be able to access the memory. That's why it is called as loosely coupled. But whereas coming to cluster, that is not the case. Clustered means that these will be inbuilt, multiple CPUs will be inbuilt in a single system, and then it will be performing. This is something like your cloud storage that we can say. The cloud storage, what we are doing, we have a very big system. As I told you, Google has its own cloud storage. So what do you mean the cloud storage is nothing but they have a very big building in which they have some racks. Each rack will have some 1 TB, means they have around 10 sets or 10 to 20 sets of 1 TB of hard disk that has been inbuilt in that particular rack. So like that, they have some thousands of racks in the building, and this is the way they actually maintain. That is what we call clustered systems. Okay. Okay. So that comes under clustered systems, and whereas coming to cluster systems, these are also of two types, as I said, asymmetric and symmetric. So same master slave here, we have a host standby mode. That is what is calling, means this particular system will not be executing anything. It will make sure that the other systems are working properly. If any of the other system is not working properly, then this particular standby mode system comes into picture and it will start performing the operations of that particular system. That comes symmetric. Whereas coming to asymmetric, that's coming to asymmetric. Whereas coming to symmetric, here we have some hosts. Since multiple CPUs are there, these will be performing operations simultaneously. There is nothing like standby mode or something in symmetric. All the different CPUs will be executing simultaneously at a time. So that's what is in this. Fine. Next, coming to the structures here, well, we have something called as batch systems. Well, this is the earlier system what we do have, batch operating system. So in this, what happens exactly? Earlier, they used to provide batches. Like the way we people are executing a program, we can't do at the time when during 90s. So at that time, what happens is we actually write this program. Let us suppose in your class there are 50 students, and if I ask you people to write a simple program, okay. Now what you people are doing, you people will be writing this program and you will be giving it to me because I am the one who is going to handle the system. Now you people will create a different program. Related. I'll just ask you to create any program. So some people have written something like matrix multiplication program. Some people might have written addition program. Some people might have written subtraction program. Now these programs are what we call it as jobs earlier during batch operating system. Now these jobs are given to the operator. Operator is nothing but I am the operator here. So you people will provide these particular programs to me. Now what I will do here is I will segregate them based upon their properties. For example, I said that some of them have written addition program and subtraction. Both are simple arithmetic programs, right? So I will group them together into a single batch. Next, some people have written, I said, matrix addition program and matrix multiplication program. So I will combine these two programs together into a single batch. Okay. So now what happens after performing this batch? Now I will give it to the system to execute that and give me the result. Okay. And since we are talking about 1990s or 1980s, during that time we don't have such a very fast system. So for example, today I am giving these programs. I have given 10 programs in a batch. Then I will get the output at the end of Friday. Okay, this much time it actually takes. And moreover, during coming to the batch operating system, we don't have something called editors and all to type it. We used to have something called as punch card. Okay, these cards are actually built using a steel kind of thing. And moreover, in that, the programmer has to carve his program. Like for example, this is a I'll explain the small diagram here. Okay, the cards will be of something like your ATM or debit card, same way, and on that it will be punched. Means punched with the help of a hammer and a nail. They'll punch it up, and don't assume that we are writing program here. They used to write program in binary zeros and ones. So it will be something like 0 1 0 0 0. Again 1 0 0 1 1. One. In this way, they used to punch it up, okay, using a hammer and a nail onto that particular device. Now this will be, so now this particular information will be given to the user, and that user what is going to do, he will insert into the system and he'll perform that particular task. Okay. Okay. So now coming to other sets, what we have a time sharing system here. So coming to the time sharing system, what is exactly going to do is multitasking, we call it up. So here each and every process will be given some amount of time. So that time will be shared among these multiple processes and it will be perform operation. So just a minute. Okay. Now coming to time sharing system here. So what happens is we usually provide time to each and every process that we do exist. Okay. Okay, fine. So small interruption, sorry. Coming to the time sharing system, what we are going to do is here, since we have multiple processes, right? So they might be executing simultaneously. So in time sharing system, what we are going to do is we will individually give certain limits to each and every process. So within that time, they have to complete this task. If they are not able to complete the task within that time, they will be sent back to the queue. From the queue, whenever they'll get a turn, again they will get executed. So well, I'll explain this time sharing much more better way in the next unit when we have round robin scheduling algorithm. So that is the example related to your time sharing operating system. Okay. So these are the one we have. What these are the differences. Now I'll show you a small diagram representing you people this batch operating system and time sharing. Yes. So you can see this. We have a batch system here. So you people can see here we have a batch system here. So batch operating system, as I said, there will be multiple users who will be writing the programs and giving it to the operator. So each one is an individual job what we talk about. Now from this operator, what he will do, he will actually classify these particular jobs into different what we call batches. It will be divided into different batches based upon the jobs what we have. Okay, as I said, like addition, subtraction, all this comes under a single batch, and matrix related programs will be coming under a single batch. Now this will be given to the computer, and computer will execute the program, and it will provide you the result. Next, we do have come across something called as time sharing system. Now, if you talk about time sharing system, if you can see here, there are 5 processes that have been represented, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And internal we have a CPU. Now, when first process comes up, it is given the CPU. The CPU is allocated to this particular process. Now, it will have a time limit, less than 1 second or 1 minute or whatever. Now, this time limit is actually depends upon the operating system. Not a, it doesn't depend upon our programming. It totally depends upon the operating system what we are using. Let us suppose it is given 1 minute. So within 1 minute, this process has to complete its execution. In case he is not completing within that time, so how much information he has completed or processed it, that will be stored here, and then the control is given to the next process, that is process 2. The process will execute. If the task is completed, well and good. If not completed, till to what extent it is completed, it will be stored back, and again the control is transmitted to the next process. Now the process 1 has to wait until and unless this circle completes. That's why I told you that these all processes will be placed in a queue, one after another, and that will be transmitted. Okay. So this is how the time sharing system will actually work. Yeah. So this is all about your time processing system, time sharing system, what we have already discussed here. So that's here. This is the way how the job is actually. So we do have an operating system, and below that we have multiple jobs. Okay. So this is a RAM of size 512 MB, and if you see here on top of this particular slot, this is for something called operating system. Like whenever you're switching on your system, Bootstrap program will load that particular program, right? So that operating system will allocate some amount of memory. For example, this is 512 MB memory, but we can use only this much memory, maybe 408 memory. What about remaining memory? This is the remaining memory, which operating system is actually capturing it. So then next, whatever the process we are actually creating, that is what we call job. So those jobs will be allocated here. So it will be executed one after another by the operating system by taking one at a time. Okay. Okay, fine. So this is all about related to your operating system structure. Fine, thank you. So this is the whole session what we have. So with this we have completed your first unit.